Alright, you guys, we're going to need to use your imagination as I take you through this story of a journey and we understand what it means to be patient. So if you guys could all imagine being super, super excited to meet the man of your dreams. He is patient, he's loving, and he's so excited to be with you and allow you to grow closer to the Lord. You get to know each other for a while, so there's no rush and there's no pressure. And finally, you both come to the point where you're sure and you're certain that this man is going to help you grow closer with the Lord, and you're going to help this man grow closer to the Lord. So, of course, as most people do, they go and they ask for permission. Well, the man usually asks for permission. And so the boy, imagine him picking up the phone and dialing, talking to your dad. And then you see the look on this man's face grow sad as you see that your dad actually says, no, you're not allowed to date. And worse, you're not allowed to date for no particular reason. It's not even that your parents don't like this guy. It's just because they want you both to be patient. And that's what I was wanting to talk to you all today about patience. So the man that I'm going to marry, his name is John, and this is actually a true story. And we both had to wait a year because my parents asked us to honor them and allow us to both grow by not contacting each other at all. So that means no texting, no emails, no phone calls, no Skype, like absolutely nothing. We couldn't even tweet at each other. So that was the extent of it. And although it seems like it could have been a really hard and difficult thing, which it was, there are actually 3 main reasons that it was the best thing that could have ever happened for us. And I wanted to talk to you about those 3 things today. And so the first thing is and was that by allowing us to have this year apart, we were both able to grow in areas of our lives being undistracted from being in a relationship. And so all the time and effort that would have gone towards calling each other and talking to each other, we are now able to use that time to get to know more about ourselves and more about our community. I was able to make friends with people that I never would have been able to talk to or would have probably been distracted from being able to talk to. And I was also able to grow in different passions and areas in my life, like volunteering with Youthquake last year and other really sweet areas in the school, even intramurals and things like that, places where I wouldn't have necessarily allotted that time. There were so many opportunities, and instead of wasting time thinking about how we couldn't be talking, instead the Lord led me to things that He wanted to draw my attention to in the moment. The second thing that I was able to learn from being far apart was how that distance and that waiting actually produced a lot of steadfastness and perseverance, both in my life and in John's life. And although we couldn't talk about that at that time, we both realized that now coming out of it, we both separately kept these little journals of prayers to God and letters we would have hoped to write to each other, realizing that as each day all we could do was turn to the Lord because we had no choice. He was actually strengthening our spirits and allowing us to see far past the moment that we were in at that time. Our prayer lives grew and we began to trust in the Lord more, which was my third and biggest point. I think oftentimes, and maybe in your youth groups and with your youth pastors, you hear them say, you should just really trust in the Lord more. And it's kind of this phrase that Christians throw around. And oftentimes you really don't know what they mean. Well, at least that was in my case. When I would hear people say, well, you should trust the Lord, I would just sit there and be like, what? Yeah, trust Him, but how and in what ways? And I found that I really had to trust in the Lord when I would sit there crying on my bed and wondering if it's ever going to work out. Sit there just frustrated and angry. Who could I talk to? Definitely not God. Definitely not John, sorry. I had to talk to God about it. And it was so good for us because as we grew our trust in the Lord separately and independently, it was able to prepare us now that we're also engaged, to be able to go through difficulties and problems from dating long distance and remembering to put God at the center, because that's the way that it's always been. Trusting in God and learning how to trust Him apart from each other has actually been able to unite us now as we pursue Him together. And so that is probably the biggest thing and the central thing that we want to now even be a part of our marriage as we look forward towards that. But some of you may be wondering and sitting in your chairs being like, that's never going to happen to me. My parents are going to let me date whoever I want. What if I'm not even waiting for a guy? Then what? Well, to that, I want to say that this doesn't just apply to a guy waiting for a man. It could be your future and not knowing where you're going to go to college next year. It could do with your job and not knowing where you're going to work or how you're going to work. It could even just be an anxious moment in the future that you want to happen. A lot of the time we can waste our time just thinking about what we're being impatient for and not taking hold of the opportunities and not persevering through waiting it out and not trusting in God. And instead, He does want us to seize those opportunities. He does want us to persevere in Him. And He does want us to grow our trust in Him and grow in our relationships with Him. Isaiah 40 verse 31 says that they who wait in the Lord will renew their strength. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. James 1 verse 2 says, do not grow weary when trials come your way, but the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And that's going to be helpful for the rest of your life. And Psalm 125 verse 1 says, those who trust in the Lord, they are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved, but abides forever. And so it's not only just on an everyday level, but also on a biblical level, provided in what we read in Scripture, that we are to focus all our heart's desire and all our attention on the Lord. Because as you can see in my personal life example, it certainly was true. And I don't think I would have been able to learn the lessons that I did without having to wait as long as I did. And so I just want to challenge you all now that whatever it is that you may be growing impatient about, even if it's just waiting in a line at the supermarket, open your eyes and see, how is the Lord calling me in this opportunity to serve? How can I be persevering through this everyday mundane task of waiting? And how can I be trusting the Lord, knowing that He is actually growing in me and in our relationship together? So take the time now to just sit and think about that. And really open your eyes, listen, and hear how God is calling you to do that, because He does speak. I was kind of trying to test your patience right there by not talking for a little bit. Anyways, hopefully you were able to learn tonight those three things, that learning in patience brings up new opportunities and characteristics in you that you may not have seen, that it produces steadfastness and perseverance, and that it builds your trust in the Lord. Thanks.
Yay.